Okay, y'all, everybody's been asking how to do the chicken flour, so here we go. This is about 3 1/4 pounds of chicken breast. And the first thing I need to do is I'm gonna trim all of the fat. You can see all those white bits of fat. I'm gonna trim as much of that fat off as I possibly can, because if this is leaner, it is easier to work with. So we're gonna trim off all that fat. We're gonna cube it up into about 1-inch size pieces. It's not real vital, but we're just gonna chop it all up, and I'm gonna put it on that parchment paper on that baking tray. I'll be back in a second. All right, y'all, here is the chicken all cut up. So I trimmed off most of the white pieces of fat. If you find little bits like that, just take them out. But I've got most of the white fat. There's little bits like this that are really stuck on there. I'm not overly worried about it, just as long as you get a majority of it off. If you can grab a big old chunk of fat and pick the chicken up, you wanna get rid of it. But this is pretty good. So all I'm gonna do is spread this out now across this parchment as evenly as I possibly can. Okay, so there's the chicken all spread out. You wanna get it as evenly spread as possible so that water can evaporate from it. Okay, this is Redmond's salt, one really good size pinch. It's not an exact measurement. You just want to lightly sprinkle this over all the chicken, and the salt is gonna help draw out some of the moisture as this begins to cook. So make sure that you use the sprinkling of salt all across the chicken, just a little. Okay, now we're going to stick this in a 300-degree oven, and it's probably gonna start out about 20 minutes. We're gonna check it then. It may need to go longer, but we're just gonna put it in an oven and start baking it at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, y'all, after 20 minutes, it is cooking, but it definitely has some more time to go, so we're gonna give it another 10 to 15, and we'll come back. All right, guys, so looks like our chicken is basically cooked. You can see the liquid starting to come out from it. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this out of the oven. That took 35 minutes at 300. All right, so here's our chicken. It's nice and hot. It's definitely cooked. You can see how much liquid has started to cook out of it. That's partially because of the salt. So what we're gonna do now is I'm just gonna kind of break this up a little bit, and then I'm gonna drop this into a blender. You can use a food processor, anything that will chop this up. We're gonna take this cooked chicken and I'm gonna put it in my blender, and I'll show you what we do next. All right, y'all, there is the chicken in the blender. That is a whole carafe full. This is like $7 worth of chicken, and it's gonna make a whole bunch of chicken flour. Now you can see how much water cooked out of it. Again, this was about 35 minutes, but here's the deal. As long as the chicken is cooked, you don't really have to worry about this. You don't really have to be afraid of overcooking it. I know we're always worried about overcooking chicken because it's gonna get dry, but guess what? That's exactly what we're trying to do. So you don't really have to worry about it. You just gotta get the chicken cooked, get it out of that liquid, and get it into some kind of a container that we can bust it up. Let me show what we're gonna do now. All right, we're gonna turn the blender on to low. Okay, now you can continue this process however you want. I'm gonna use a microwave. You can do it in the oven, it's just gonna take a lot longer, but here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this chicken, this has been all busted up into kind of a shredded looking chicken mess. I'm gonna put it into the biggest container I have that will still fit in my microwave. Put it into whatever container you want. If you're doing this in the oven, you can use a huge container, whatever, but spread it out as far as you can for whichever particular appliance you're using. Okay, so I'm gonna put this into this container here, in this glass container, and then we're gonna put it in the microwave. All right, this is still pretty hot, but you can see it's really busted up fine. Now we're gonna spread this out as evenly as we can, and we're gonna start microwaving this in 1 to 2 minute increments. And each time we take it out, we're gonna stir it around, and as it starts to get drier, we'll put it back in the blender and we'll blend it up finer and then pour it back out, and we're gonna go back and forth as necessary until we get this to be dry and crumbly. Okay, so I'm just microwaving it in 1 to 2 minute increments. You know, if you have this much of it, you can kind of do it 2 minutes at a time as well. But I'm just pulling it out each time, and I'm just kind of going through like this with something to stir it around and bust it up. You can see steam coming off of it. We're cooking all of that water out of the chicken, and it happens much, much faster in the microwave than it will in the oven. Now, if you don't want to use a microwave, or if you're concerned about microwaves, I know there's some people that have those issues, that they don't want to use a microwave. That's cool. You can stick this into an oven on like 200 degrees, 250 degrees, all spread out on a cookie sheet, and get kind of the same thing. It's just gonna take a lot longer. Okay, so we're just gonna stir it up real good, break up all the little pieces, and back into the microwave it goes again. right, y'all, this is a total of 5 minutes in the microwave so far. Now, it's not done, but to make my job a little bit easier in the end, every now and then I go through and I put this back into the blender as I'm drying this out, and I kind of run the blender through it a little again because it breaks up any little pieces. And what you're gonna do is continue doing this back and forth every so often. It's gonna keep everything broken up, which is gonna help it dry out easier. And it's also going to create that really fine flour texture. That's what really, really helps. So we're gonna keep going back and forth. So I'm gonna put the rest of this in the blender, run it for 20 or 30 seconds just to break everything back up, and then we'll go back to microwave. Okay, now do you guys see how it's kind of starting to move on its own? It's starting to turn over, and those lumps from the top will start to go down on their own. That's because it's drying out, and so it's not getting stuck in the blender blade. Okay, so that's what we want to see. So we're gonna blend it up a little bit, and then we're gonna put it back in the container and keep microwaving. Okay, now this is gonna wanna clump together like this. That's totally normal, right? But that's because it's getting finer and finer, and the little bit of liquid that is still in there is causing that to stick together. So keep breaking it up, keep microwaving, and keep doing the same process until it turns into chicken flour. Okay, so once you get the chicken flour dry enough, this is what it's gonna look like in a blender turned on low. I'm gonna turn it up just a little. Okay, once you get it that dry and it will actually move on its own, all you need to do is blend it until it is fine enough. Now, I put this in a smaller container. I cut this down in like half because this is a lot of work on a blender motor. So do this in small batches if your blender is not very powerful. I even had to do it in smaller batches in this, which is a powerful blender. Take your time, split it up into batches, and that's what we want it to look like. Now I'm gonna blend it up the rest of the way, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. All right, y'all, last thing we need to do is we're gonna run this through a fine mesh sieve. So this is straight out of the blender, and I'm just gonna run it through a sieve to make sure I have all the chunks out of it, break it all up, and turn it into flour. And here is our finished chicken flour. Just look at the texture on that. It's perfect, it's beautiful, it's dry. Put this in a Ziploc bag or some kind of storage container, keep it in the refrigerator. I don't know if it's shelf stable, but it does really great in the refrigerator, and it does some amazing things. So there you go, guys. That's how we make chicken flour. And I know you're probably gonna ask, can this be done with beef or pork or fish or shrimp or anything else? The answer is probably, but I have not tried. So if somebody out there does an experiment with different kinds of meats, just let us all know in the comments section. So tell me down below in the comments, what are you going to use homemade chicken flour for your first recipe? This can go into any recipe where you would use a meat flour like a pork panko or any of that kind of stuff for the most part. And I'm developing some brand new recipes that use specifically this. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Chris cooking Nashville. Eat your meat and your chicken flour. Love your life. I'll see you guys in the kitchen for the next recipe.